can decide on behalf of the Muslims, as the case may be, you know. So we have a long way to go. But the question is, who exactly is the real enemy of the Muslims? You know, they say that they live eating, meaning that they live literally, it means that they live that is eating insect, it lives inside the plant itself, which means the enemy and traitor is within. As we have enemy within, we call it have enemies without, you know. So our real enemies rather, are those who have sold Palestine to the Jew Zionists. And of course, we should not be surprised that these enemies of ours, they pray the way that we pray, they fast the way that we fast, they give sadaqat, they give zakat, they perform pilgrimage the way we do all these things as well. But unfortunately, they are the enemies who have sold us to who? To people who are to people who are really who are attacking us today. So our actual enemy, like I've said, they were the one who made possible the creation and occupation of the Zionists on the Palestinian lands. And let me say it this way: our real enemies, kingdom was created through the help of the so-called superpowers. That means we have sub-enemies. We equally have our real enemies as well, as the case may be. Let me say it this way. Let me be bold by saying that our real enemy in this situation is no other person, is no other one than the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's so unfortunate that we're where we are today because of the position of Saudi government, because of the way even Saudi as a nation came into being in the first instance. For information, like you're aware, the scholars in Saudi Arabia have been bought. They are more or less scholars to the kings. All that they preach is what the kings want at any point in time. They cannot on their own decide on the kind of khutbah they want to give on the minbar. In fact, more often than not, they can't talk about siyasa on the minbar, that is politics. If they do, they'll be apprehended. If they do, they'll be imprisoned. And of course, they become a stooge. They become stooges rather to their kings. The kings determine what should be preached. The king determines what should be said on the minbar at any point in time. So our scholars have been bought, and today, unfortunately, they have not only been bought, they have been able to spread this virus to other nations of Islam. And that is exactly what led to the battlefield of the so-called Salafiyah and Salafiyah. That they will argue that today they do not see anything wrong in whatever Saudi is doing, whether good or bad. Saudi must be supported. Whether good or bad, Saudi cannot make a mistake. Their scholars cannot make a mistake. So we will see all these things. So in essence, this is the enemy who sold Palestine to the Jews Zionists. And this same enemy, we must see as enemy, and we need to fight them economically if it's possible. What am I talking about here? Can we even fight them economically? Have we gotten the way we're there to fight them economically? Academically? Yes, academically we can fight them anyway. They're their own scholars. Because it's all about history. History is always there that we can actually fall back on. Take a look at what has happened in the past with a view to foretelling to the future, as the case may be. So financially, can we fight them? These are people who the multi-trillion dollars investment all over the world. They have gotten what it takes to fight this particular war, economically, academically, and financially. So we have a long way to go. And if we want to win a battle against the Jewish Zionists, the best thing to do is for the Muslims to come together and fight their common enemy. We have said this, in the past 3 or 4 lectures that we have actually held here. But the issue is that have we gotten all it takes to fight our common enemy? Let us go through the history. of how all these things actually happen, so that we can appreciate what we're talking about here today, so that we understand the evil that been perpetrated by our common enemy. It's all we know that, you know, all the previous caliphates were replaced with another one, Turkey inclusive, which happened to be the capital, the last capital of Dawla was Osmania, the Ottoman Empire. Destruction of Islamic caliphate. Who was the one in charge? The same Saudi Arabia. And we know that this Ottoman Empire was truncated with the help of Arab nationalists, rather, championed by the Sharif of Hijaz on one side, and King Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia, of Niger, rather, on the other side. How did they make it possible? The British had promised both Abdulaziz Saud and Sharif Hijaz, what happens to be Hussein bin Hali, the kingdom of the Arabian Peninsula. But later on, you know, when the enemies understand us very well. That is why they will always make sure that we are not in any way united. So, but the British and Zionists later preferred Abdulaziz bin Saud and helped him to establish a new Saudi kingdom. Sharif, who fought to assist them to destroy the Ottoman Empire, he was later betrayed as well. And of course, because he was stubborn, he did not want them to occupy Palestine. They eventually fought him and replaced him as well. So we have a long way to go here. And let me quickly make it known here that there were three distinct authorities on the Arabian Peninsula after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The first is the Sharif of Hijaz, Hussein bin Ali, who was at that point in time controlling the West. The second of them was Abdulaziz bin Saud of Najd. And of course, he was religiously fanatical because he was on the side of Sheikh Abdul Wahab. And what have you? And he just, of course, consists mainly of Mecca, Medina, and Tabuk, which at that point in time was being controlled by the Sharif, by Sharif Hussein. So there was a promise that when you fight on our side and are able to destroy the caliphacy, this is what we give in return. But of course, they've forgotten the fact that you cannot make a promise with a kafir or with kuffar and get positive results. Of course, there was a promise. Eventually, there was a betrayal because the person in question, Sharif Hussein bin Ali, they said that no, this is what I wanted, but they wanted something else at that point in time, you know. And of course, fast forward, before the World War and the fall of Ottoman Empire, King Abdulaziz, popularly called with Ibn Saud by the West, he formed a military whatever, named Ikhwan. It's not the same Ikhwan of Hassan al-Banna. It's not the same thing. You know, they were formed from the civilians to assist the real soldiers, you know, in Saudi Arabia at that point in time. And of course, this was around 1912. This Ikhwan military, like I mentioned, is not the same as the Ikhwan of Muslimun that was established in 1928. You know, and of course, this particular group is a force that was raised from the civilian population to supplement the regular army in case of emergency, as the case may be. And of course, like I've been told, the Ottoman Empire has been dissolved. But there have been plans ongoing to scuttle the Islamic Caliphate from within. And the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire was in June 1916. But the British had already had a pact with Ibn Saud, who was a trusted ally to scuttle the Islamic Caliphate from within. You can imagine Muslims fighting Muslims here. And the same thing is what we can see here today anyway. Let me say like 10 years ago, about we did not even hear much of the Salafis. But we can see what is happening today anyway. They are the one going about destroying what the Muslims have built over the years. And no thanks to scholars to Saudi Arabia, and what have you. So after the Ottoman Empire, fell in 1919, the group that Abbasid formed then, the Ikhwan, began a campaign against the Hashemite kingdom of the Jazz. And of course, the mistake of Sharif at that point in time, they're not forgotten, because he was also seeking for caliphacy. And this made him engage the revolt against the Ottoman Empire. And of course, the British had promised him at that point in time, a single independent Arab state that would include modern-day Syria, Iraq, Palestine, and Jordan, which was called Transjordan then, in addition to the Hijaz region. So you can see that we have a long way to go as Muslims. So as soon as the war against the Ottoman Empire ended, the Sharif Hussein wanted to hold the British to their wartime promises. And what was that promise? To allow him to be the leader of the whole of Saudi Arabian Peninsula and Hijaz, as the case may be, And at that point in time, he made it clear that he will not give his consent to the establishment of Zionism in Palestine or accept the new random borders drawn across Arabia by the British and French imperialists. This man is very bold anyway. And of course, we must acknowledge his boldness. But that boldness eventually ended in handing a lot of enemies eventually. So the British and the French imperialists eventually, they saw Sharif Hussein as what? As a nuisance. As what? A recalcitrant. As someone who will always make it difficult for them to achieve their aims eventually. And of course, at that point in time, the enemies of Islam were prepared to take drastic action, measures to bring about the construct of the new reality. And the funny thing, what happened during Ottoman Empire, the same thing happened during the fall of the Abbasid Empire. The tendency, because at that point in time, it was the rivalry and polemics, of various Islamic group tendencies that destroyed Abbasid Caliphate as well. Until the Tatars and the Mongols ransacked Islamic homeland to kill Muslims en masse without sparing anybody at that point in time. If you take a look at even our third collection, we will see all these things there. Now, the Europeans, the Zionists, they have a way of bribing their way to achieve results. What did they do? They employed Lawrence of Arabia, known as Thomas Edward Lawrence, to meet Sharif, to bribe and persuade him to accept the British Zionist colonial project in Palestine. Initially, he was offered 80,000 rupees, but Sharif rejected it. They now have offered him annual payment of 100,000 pounds, which he equally refused, to compromise and sell Palestine to British Zionism. The man was very bold. Even though he made a mistake too, to have fought the Muslims. But the fact that he did not allow them to occupy Palestine became an issue for him. And when this bribery or what have you failed to persuade him to do their biddings, he was threatened with an Ibn Saud takeover. That look, it is simple now. You do not agree with us. Your brother will take over from you and become the president and become the king as the case may be. And of course, these guys are very powerful. In terms of war ammunitions, they have possessed everything. If it is money, they have gotten everything. And what have you? So in between negotiation with the Sharif, Lawrence visited other leaders in Arabian Peninsula and informed them that if they don't toe the British line and avoid entering into an alliance with Sharif, the empire will unleash terror on Ibn Saud and his Wahhabis. And his Wahhabism or what have you. So these are the issues. So we can say boldly here that Islamic Caliphate led to the emergence of modern Saudi state, the destruction rather of Islamic Caliphate led to the emergence of modern Saudi state and the establishment of the state of Israel Palestine. We cannot see that the traitor is within. Subhanallah. In the year 1919, the Ikhwan military, like I said, this same Ikhwan is not the same as Ikhwan Muslimun of Hassan al-Banna. They eventually attacked Sharif Hussein with the help of Zionists. He was defeated, and of course, he was defeated and was removed from power. By the end of 1920, the British extremely increased their sponsor to Ibn Saud. Before, like I said, it was their stooge. He was being paid stipends anyway to always support them to achieve their aims, as the case may be. But what they did was this. By the end of 1920, they increased the allowance of Ibn Saud with a monthly grant of £10,000 in gold, subhanAllah, on top of his monthly subsidy. He equally received abundant arms supplies, totaling more than 10,000 rifles, in addition to the critical stage and 4-feet guns with British Indian instructors. And of course, finally, in September 1921, the British unleashed Ibn Saud on hill, and eventually toppled Sharif Hussein. And at that same time, they were subsidizing heavily Ibn Saud. After a further 3 rounds of negotiation in Amman and London, it became clear to the British Empire that Hussein will never relinquish Palestine to the British Zionist project or accept the new divisions in Arab land. So it's like a war was instigated between 2 Muslim brothers, 2 Muslim leaders now, Sharif Hussein and Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia. And these guys did not stop to continuously bribe Ibn Saud to the extent that they advanced a grant of 50,000 pounds up front, which amounted to a year's subsidy. So by March 1924, British Empire announced that it had terminated all discussions with Sharif Hussein to reach an agreement. Why? Because the guy did not cooperate with them. So we can see what the issue is here now. And of course, in the same year, 1924, we see, having seen all the plots of self-proclaimed Caliph of the Arab in Makkah, that is no suit. The Ikhwan military labeled the act heretical and accused Hussein of obstructing the performance of Hajj to Makkah. So it's a way of giving a dog a bad name in order to kill the dog. And of course, the Ikhwan, which he formed, Amir Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia, revolted against Jordan, now Jordan, Iraq, and Hijaz simultaneously, and they massacred several hundred of the inhabitants. Muslims attacking Muslims, Muslims destroying Muslims. Makkah fell to the Ikhwan. Let me always say this thing. It's not the same Ikhwan of Ramadan anyway. And of course, Jeddah and Medina surrendered, and they won all the Hijaz for Ibn Saud. This same Ikhwan thought their success was due to their claim Tawhid, that because they believe in Allah, they are people of Tawhid and what have you. That was why they were able to win the war, because they were fighting Bidia, and its people and what have you. Unknown to them that Abdulaziz Saud tricked them, as he was receiving funds, like I mentioned before, and ammunition from Britain to fight and kill the Muslims. And I've said that this Ikhwan military were democratic Muslims and followers of the Sheikh Abu Muhammad Abdul Wahab, brother of Islam. Of course, we know that they were very harsh in Aqidah matters, and almost everything, according to them, is considered Bidia and Haram. At that point in time, even to use microphone is Haram. All in the guise of Tawhid and what have you, subhanAllah. So in Taif, Ibn Saud Ikhwan, Ibn Saud people, the Ikhwan soldiers, they committed customary massacres, slaughtered women and children, as well as going to the mosque and killing traditional Islamic scholars who do not subscribe to Ibn Saud's leadership. And of course, by October 1924, they've already captured Mecca. And Sharif Hussein was, forced to relocate to go to exile, rather. So all these are the problems Muslims have been having over the years anyway. So eventually, the British officially recognized Ibn Saud as the new king of Hijaz in February 1926 with other European powers. And the new unified Wahhabi state was rebranded by the British Empire in 1932 as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, named after King Abdulaziz Al Saud. So you can see that originally, Mecca and Medina do not belong to the family of Saud. The original owners of Mecca and Medina were the rulers of present-day Jordan. I did not say it too, but the history is there for us to go through anyway. Because before, the sons and grandsons of Sharif Hussein were the ones controlling Jordan, the actual kingdom of Jordan. Till now, right from Abdullah won of Transjordan in 1991. And of course, when the Britain had assisted Ibn Saud to create Saudi Arabia, what was the price? The price paid was Palestine. And eventually, Israel got Palestine so easy. And for information, like you're all aware, Israel wasn't recognized until 1940, before what? 1948. And it was then that they expelled more than 750,000 Palestinians from their homeland. They were displaced within the newly created state of Israel. It's a case of who pays the piper dictates the tune. Because that is why today one does wonders why scholars will always go to the door of those in power to beg for assistance. Because eventually you become their students anyway, and they can do whatever they want to do with you. They can destroy you. That is why we always respect Sheikh Adam Abdullah. When he was alive, he was invited by the governor, and he told them, no, they must come and meet him in his own place. He never went to the doorstep of any government. But today, what is happening? At afar. Forgetting the fact that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. And of course, we can see that even the Saudi government today, they are trying to rewrite the history to favor them. The kind of defense. The way the scholars to rewrite the history of Saudi Arabia, forgetting the fact that the history that has been written will be difficult to be wiped out of history. Even the so-called British government too, they're actually assisting them to do what? They write their history. And because they argue that even the invasion of Hijaz was motivated by religious fanaticism and not by British imperialism. So we can see that the Muslims have a long way to go. See the price we paid to give away Palestine to the enemies of Islam. Just because of this world. Just because of what we actually want to get in this world anyway. Forgetting the fact that we are actually able to Allah eventually on Yom Al-Qiyamah. And of course, we know that after the World War II, and especially with the kind of issue in 1948, Zionism likely means supporting the state of Israel. The meaning of Zionism the way it is today. To do what? To support the state of Israel. And as far as those people, regardless of what you do for the, you can Like the Christians and the Kuffars they will never like you until you have followed their footsteps. If you think you want to cooperate with them to get something done for you and what have you, the Quran has told us that look, these people will never learn. They would Allah the word learn never. Tarudo. The Yahud, the Jews and the Christians, until you have followed their footsteps. You know. So the enemies of Islam, they understood the potency of Islamic unity, and they continue to instigate issues that will be what? Accentuate the division. And for Muslims to come together, what do? We keep on fighting ourselves on trivial issues. I did mention that who will Muslim. You can imagine if Saudi, you can imagine what happened today. What am I talking about anyway? When Saudi when they could even fight their neighbors and destroy them who are Muslims. For what reason? Stupid excuses or what have you. And the question is, the blood of the Muslims is so cheap that it can be shared at any point in time. Muslims fighting Muslims, and we have read that when Muslims face themselves with their swords, the killer and the killed will go into hellfire. Was asked, it's understandable now. A person who had been killed, he said, no, that person equally had the intention of killing the person who killed him. So the cheapest blood today is the blood of the Muslims. But today, unfortunately, we will fight on behalf of the Ummah. We will speak on behalf of the Muslims. Even in Nigeria, in Africa, and what have you, in Europe, in America, in Asia, Saudi Arabia, we will speak on behalf of the Muslims. Like I did mention before, in those days when Etalapomeni snitched, the whole world was cold. Who today, just a few days ago, the military bombed Muslims who gathered to celebrate Muhammad Nabi. And he said they were suspected as terrorists. So what are we talking about here? So we can see here today the contribution of Saudi Kingdom as it were then to sell Palestine, to give them a way toward to our enemies. So like I've said at the beginning, we have sub-enemies, we have real enemies. But the question is, if we must win this war, if we must ensure that we liberate Palestine, the common enemies who happen to be the enemies within must be forced academically, financially, and economically. But have we gotten the way with that to fight this war in the first instance? Let me pause here to allow for contribution, questions, and to equally make it a more robust discussion. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله خيرا. Well, again, Haji has taken us through historical perspective by identifying those who he referred to as enemy within and enemy without, and justifiably taking us through the history, how the price the Muslim world had to pay for the creation of Israel in the heart of the Muslim world, in Palestine is the creation of our coveted Saudi Arabia. Well, they have titled this story very painful for those of us who may not know. That is the truth of history that cannot be changed. We have 15 minutes to take contribution reactions before we wrap up today. And hopefully, inshallah, next week, we will probably be playing host to our national coordinator who will be taking us through the Surah Al-Baqarah, answering the question, why did Allah have to address the Bani Israel in our book that they did not believe in? Inshallah. So, inshallah, if there are anybody who have questions, clarification to make, you can kindly raise up your digital hand so that I can recognize you before I call on Imam Emeritus to close for tonight. Anybody? I can't see any hand. Well, it's either we are confused or we are convinced that we are the enemy of ourselves. I really I cannot determine which one is correct now. Whether Alaji has confused us that the creation of our loved and coveted Saudi Arabia is the price that we had to pay for the crisis that the world is witnessing today. Or he has convinced us. I don't know which one. That's the silence in the house is deafening. But since we have all refused to talk, do I have your permission to call on Imam Emeritus to, I'm not sure, to close?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. We thank Allah for everything. We specifically thank Allah for our Imam Al-Hajj Qasim Alabi. He surely didn't confuse us. But sometimes when you take somebody through historical lane, there is nostalgia, there's a very strong feeling about it. It may be that, like me, everybody was wondering what to say. May Allah bless him once again. But we can summarize the whole tragedy in 3 sentences. We fell before we knew that we had fallen. We fell long before now. We fell when we were at the center of the world, leading a civilization. We fell shortly after Abu Bakr, but Allah used Umar ibn Khattab to hold the Islamic nation. But Ali radiallahu anhu was not able to patch it together after a long, weak reign of Usman. The lesson here is, 1, the leader must not be materialistic. Any leader that is materialistic, either looking for wealth or power, will certainly fail. Umar did not look for either. Umar conquered Jerusalem without shooting an arrow, and he was handed over the key when he was walking ahead of a rider who was his servant and wearing clothes torn all over. Torn clothes, that was what Umar wore when he took over Jerusalem. And wealth became the matter, the value, the issue after Umar. You remember, it was said that the Prophet ﷺ said, this will happen. There will be fitna. We shall fight one another and kill one another and shed one another's blood. And when Umar asked Hudayfa, will it happen in my time? Hudayfa bin Yaman radiallahu anhu told Umar, you are the block, you are the wall blocking the fitan. When they got to know, and a Jew killed Umar bin Khattab. We probably should think of how to personally survive. I may be wrong. We are doing this to understand why it is difficult to solve this problem. It is not so that we will solve the problem. If the Prophet ﷺ predicted it and had told Hudayfa that Umar was the stumbling block between the Muslims and fitan, and the fitan started immediately after the death of Umar, you can imagine the capacity of whoever to make it happen again. Yet, we ruled the world, and we were still powerful up to 100 years ago. What we should understand is that we started falling since that time. What should astonish an intelligent person is that why is Islam still standing? Christianity did not experience it this bad before it crumbled completely, before it remained only name. Judaism did not go through this trouble before it became impracticable. But despite all this trouble, what should astonish the intelligent Muslim is, why is it that Islam is still the fastest growing religion in the world? It does not astonish me, but it should astonish people. If Islam has been going through all this trouble, what we can think is trouble for Muslims, Gaza, like any other trouble, has produced new Muslims. People who are intelligent are becoming Muslims in spite of this. Perhaps this is Allah's way of propagating the religion, preserving it, and making it an amazing religion. The Quran that we are abandoning and then reading books, causing trouble, following opinions, and falling further is now being read, understood, and then is now converting people on its own. The Quran is converting people to Islam. My worry is simply this: are we not going to be shamed when new Muslims start teaching us Islam? Will it not be a shame on us when non-Muslims start teaching us Islam? Finally, the take-home should be that our dawah should be non-sectarian, non-emotive. We should not be emotional about this dawah. We should be careful of aligning with the 7 banana peels. We should be Muslims only. We shouldn't bother to be liked, and we shouldn't worry that we are hated. Many Muslims hate us. Many Muslims do not like us. Many Muslims wonder what is sticking us, what is keeping us together. But I dare say that apart from the vexed issue of moral impropriety, we are still good to go if we avoid moral issues, if we avoid immorality, if we avoid individually doing things that we took bay'ah not to do, whoever has done anything upon which he took bay'ah should revert to me privately, and that is the way to go. Allah may still use us. Allah may use us to be individually Hujjatul Islam. I ask Allah to give us a better understanding of this. I'll ask Allah to bond us together. I will ask Allah to accept this effort as an act of ibadah, to be pleased with us, to forgive our sins, to overlook our faults, to pardon our mistakes, to make us inmates of Al-Jannah, admit us into Al-Jannah, forgive our dead, ancient and recent, and keep us alive, keep us well, give us the gift of life freely, give us the gift of faith, security, peace of mind, good health and happiness, and make us live happily as evidence that you can still be a Muslim and be happy. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. تب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة ما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Jazakallah khairan. And at this stage where we will have to call it a day today, like I said, inshallah, all things being equal, we'll be playing host to the national coordinator in person of Alhaji Barrister Nuruddin Asunugi himself next week. Who will be taking us.
Doctor too.
Sir?
Alhaji Barrister Doctor.
To work Alhaji Barrister Dr. Sheikh Nuruddin Asunugi, who will be taking us through, who will be answering the question why Allah chose to address the Bani Israel in our book, despite their disbelieving in it. Inshallah, he sends an apology that he has issue with network tonight. Hopefully next week he will be up and doing. Once again, Jazakallah khairan, and we meet to do the same thing next week. Allah spend our lives. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عليكم السلام ورحمة
عليكم السلام
الله
ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله كل خير.